Some people don't need enemies to destroy them, they do it themselves. Only careless sentence at a time, not with fists, not with scandal, but with simple everyday words that sound bold, confident, maybe even wise, but beneath that surface, it's fear, it's pride, it's stagnation, disguised as strength. You've heard these phrases before, maybe you've even said them offhand, without thinking, that's just who I am, I don't need to explain myself, it is what it is. And just like that, without realizing it, we build walls where there should be doors. We trade awareness for ego, curiosity for certainty, growth for comfort. The Stoics warned us the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, but what if it's not just thoughts? What if it's our words, those quiet, casual phrases that shape our identity, our future, and our peace? Today, we're not here to shame anyone, we're here to wake up, because the difference between wisdom and ignorance isn't how much you know, it's how honestly you're willing to listen, reflect, and change. So stay with me. You might recognize a few of these lines, and that recognition might just be the first step to becoming something stronger, sharper, more grounded. If you're ready to stop speaking from ego and start speaking from awareness, consider subscribing. Let's keep building something real. 1. That's just how I am. You've probably heard someone say it before, that's just how I am. Maybe you've even said it yourself. It usually shows up during a tough conversation, maybe after hurting someone's feelings or dodging responsibility. And at first, it sounds solid, strong, like a statement of self-awareness, but take a closer look, and it's really just a wall, a defense mechanism, a subtle way of saying, I don't want to look at this more deeply. It pretends to be truth, but it's actually resistance. Resistance to change, resistance to self-examination, and when we keep using it, it becomes a quiet kind of sabotage. The Stoics believed that life is a constant process of refinement. Seneca once said, as long as you live, keep learning how to live. That's not just advice, it's a challenge. It means that the process of becoming better never ends. You're not a fixed identity, you're not a label. You're a work in progress, whether you choose to participate in that progress or not. When someone says, that's just how I am, what they're really doing is closing the door on that process. They're choosing comfort over growth, familiar pain over unfamiliar progress. Let's be honest, it's uncomfortable to admit we need to change. It requires humility. It means facing the fact that the way we've been showing up, maybe for years, isn't working anymore. And the ego hates that. The ego wants to be right, not real. It wants to stay in charge, even if that means keeping us stuck. That's why that's just how I am is so dangerous. It gives the ego permission to stop evolving, and when growth stops, suffering sneaks in. Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Think about that. What you're avoiding, those blind spots, those patterns you excuse away with a shrug, are actually shaping your destiny. You're not fated to be short-tempered, you're not born to be closed off or impatient or emotionally unavailable, you're just used to being that way, and that's just how I am is the excuse you use to avoid confronting it, and it's not just about relationships or personality. This mindset seeps into every part of life. People use it in their careers. I'm not good with money, I'm just not organized, I've never been a morning person, but what they're really saying is I'm unwilling to put in the work to become better. Intelligence, discipline, kindness, emotional depth. These aren't gifts, they're skills, and like any skill they require practice. You're not supposed to be good at everything. Naturally, you're supposed to be willing to learn. Stoicism teaches us that character is shaped by choices, not excuses. You surrender it to your past, your wounds, your habits, but your past is not your prison, it's your raw material. Your mistakes, your upbringing, your trauma, they don't define you unless you let them. They're the stone you carve your character from. But let's be real, change is hard. It's messy, it's slow, and it usually starts with discomfort. You realize something about yourself. Maybe you're defensive, impatient, dismissive, and your first reaction might be shame. You want to hide from it, but Stoicism doesn't ask for perfection, it asks for courage. The courage to face what is the courage to say, this part of me needs work. That's not weakness, that's self-respect. The irony is the people who say that's just how I am are usually trying to protect their identity, but in doing so, they trap themselves in it. They freeze in place while the world moves on. They become like statues, solid, unmoving, slowly forgotten. Because here's the truth, people grow apart when one of them refuses to grow at all. You might be staying the same, thinking you're being real or loyal to who you are, but what you're really doing is slowly becoming irrelevant to your goals, your relationships, your potential. Aristotle believed that excellence is not an act but a habit. He said, we are what we repeatedly do, so if you keep repeating the same reactions, the same attitudes, the same excuses, that becomes your identity. Not because it's true, but because it's familiar. If you want to change your life, change your habits. And if you want to change your habits, start by changing your words. Replace, that's just how I am with this, is something I can work on. That small shift is everything. Even the way we talk to ourselves matters. That's just how I am becomes a script we run in our heads every time we mess up. We use it to dodge the hard work of accountability. But imagine how different things could be if you spoke to yourself the way a wise friend would, not harshly, not with shame, But with truth, something like this isn't working for me anymore, and that's okay, I can try something else. That's where real power comes from, not from pretending you're fine as you are, but from realizing you're not finished and never will be. And here's something worth thinking about: the people you admire most. They didn't get there by staying the same, they got there by constantly refining themselves, by being honest about what wasn't serving them, by outgrowing the versions of themselves that were holding them back. That's the path. Not dramatic overnight change, but steady, honest growth. The Stoics didn't just preach discipline and logic, they lived it. They challenged themselves daily to become better men, better thinkers, better citizens. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." You can't be free if you're still chained to the belief that you can't change, you can't grow. If you're still defending the parts of yourself that are quietly destroying your potential, so the next time that phrase rises up, "That's just how I am," pause, ask yourself, is this really who I am, or is it who I've settled for? You are not your worst habits, you are not your default settings. You are what you're willing to confront and change. That's where identity lives, not in comfort, but in the fire of self-awareness. The real tragedy of "that's just how I am" isn't that it sounds ignorant, it's that it kills curiosity, it stops questions before they're even asked, it silences the voice inside you that wants to do better, feel deeper, live fuller, and if you repeat it long enough, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You become a character in your own life. A flat, unchanging version of someone who once had potential but chose to coast instead. But there's another way. You can challenge the script, you can choose to speak differently, think differently, show up differently. You can say, "I've got work to do, and I'm okay with that." You can see yourself as a student of life, not someone who's arrived, but someone who's still climbing. You can practice what Jung called individuation, the ongoing process of becoming your most whole and honest self. He said the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, and who you truly are is not fixed, it's unfolding. So don't waste that privilege hiding behind a phrase that keeps you small. Don't mistake being stuck for being strong. You have permission to evolve, not because you're broken, but because you're human. Because the best parts of you are still waiting to be discovered too. That's how it's always been. You've probably heard it before, maybe in a meeting, during an argument, or when someone's feeling cornered. They shrug, almost proud, and say, "Well, that's how it's always been." It lands with finality like a brick wall. No more questions, no room for change, just tradition, routine, comfort. And while that might feel safe, the truth is that sentence has stopped more growth, progress, and possibility than almost anything else. It's not a reason, it's a reflex, a mental shortcut that shuts down thinking before it even begins. It sounds responsible, it sounds like wisdom, but often it's fear, wearing a mask. Let's be real, change is uncomfortable. It challenges your sense of identity, it pushes you to examine systems, choices, relationships, and beliefs you've held for years. That's hard. It's far easier to hold on to what's familiar, to defend the past like it's sacred. But as the Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, it is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. When we cling to what's always been, we shut down the very process of learning. We stop listening, we stop asking questions, and when we do that, we stop growing. People use this phrase in all kinds of ways. In families, we've always handled things like this. At work, this is just how we've done it for years. In relationships, that's how I was raised. And slowly, silently, these little phrases start to calcify. They become the emotional and mental armor we wear to avoid confrontation with the unknown, because adapting means admitting that maybe, just maybe, there's a better way. And for some, that kind of vulnerability feels terrifying. But